Welcome to the Augmented Future LearnCast, where we're going to take a look at yesterday, today, and tomorrow in the world of AR, VR, XR, and any other R we can think of. And to get us started, Troy Knight.
Thank you, Ken. And yeah, there's a lot of R's that are in there, aren't there? Well, I'm Troy Knight. I'm CEO and founder of BLDG25. Ken, I guess our backgrounds have really kind of intertwined for a long time now. It feels like I'm dating myself, but my background has been, working in emerging technologies and the design industries, emerging technologies industries and learning industries, roughly for I think about the past 23 years. And really, it's all been about creating these, custom digital strategies and experiences for Fortune 500 companies. That's everything from AAA games to virtual, immersive experiences and VR software, developing enterprise platforms and running, global learning, production teams. And, my Venn diagram, like yours, Ken, is kind of really at the intersection of emerging technologies, design, and business strategy. If I, look at who we are as BLDG25, we're a custom software company. We create innovative digital products and strategies to help solve complex business challenges. So I know you well, Ken, but why don't you tell the group out here about you and your background?
Yeah, Troy. So your career and mine have ping-ponged back and forth since 1998. So it's been a while, and I've been in the learning field and the learning industry for almost 35 years now. A lot of what I've been involved in started in technology and content creation. I had the fortune of being involved in companies that were oftentimes 10, 15 years ahead of the rest of the market. Which is a fun place to be, but it also tends to be one of those things where, we're a little bit ripe for the market and the market itself isn't quite ready. The great thing is that you stick around long enough and you get a chance to come back around. So we're back in the game of VR and gaming and animation where it's fun again. And then, a lot of the things I've been working with lately deal with the next normal. And that's an exciting place to be because even though it's in, some dire circumstances, when you think about COVID-19, the need of the general populace and of organizations now for virtual environments is more prevalent than ever. And so it's an exciting place to be. So Troy, give us a little history on how we got here.
Yeah, it was, as you said, we've been around and together for a long time. And if we, look at, really kind of how we came, into this technology and really kind of how the advancements, was really for that day and time. If we look in the late 80s, internet was kind of coming of age, cutting edge software technology was really pushing the limits of what, these computers could do. And David Smith, back in 1988, created one of the first games on the Macintosh called The Colony. And it was the first game of its kind to really let a player move freely in this rendered graphic world in real time. And actually, it also was one of the first 3D games to allow a player to drive a vehicle. So when you look at this kind of core technology, helped really kind of build this launching point for a number of creative products and allowed companies and really us, Ken, I, and others as developers to really be forward thinkers. I mean, if I look at, one of the stats that I know that we had within Virtus, was like 80% of the population could not visualize what a 2D map or blueprint drawing would look like in 3D, or what would it look like once it was built. And this technology, because I come from degrees in architecture, civil engineering and mechanical engineering, and And visualization is such a key in those industries. And that technology really kind of helped bridge the gap of visual communication. There's still challenges, with the hardware and the software, during which, we were still kind of facing some of those same today. And Ken, you and I faced a lot of this, out there and speaking, at engagements and conferences. It was interesting because everyone wanted it. It was like the best thing since like sliced bread, but no one wanted to change their habits onto using it. For example, an architect, golf architects, building architects, and they saw the power of what it could do, but the habit they had to change was to get off the drafting board. They didn't have a computer. They didn't own one, that was in their office. So they had to either learn to use a computer, buy the software, and be able to and learn how to use it. And so that was a kind of a barrier for entry for those individuals. The cost was high, especially if you're buying a computer and buying the software on top of that. And sometimes it could take too long because you're trying to figure out how to build in 3D, because you really had to have a mindset of how things were built and come together.
Yeah.
A lot of the technology and the tools and the software things that we built at first made it really easy, to kind of take us through that and how to build things easily. And then also you need these like massive video cards, to run the software. So again, the low adoption to the users that were out there, but the VR devices, really look more like the size of dark helmet on Spaceballs. And, even though, it was clunky a little bit in that way, but it was low frame rates. It was, increased dizziness. I think every time I had to have a wastebasket or something next to my desk because the frame rates were low and it would kind of mess with my head. But, even though, there were still those challenges and not really many people went to the device and headsets, that, we at Vertus and others that were in this industry, were clever enough to kind of create solutions that would work, for our clientele. So when you look at the technology and you look at, what was comprised of it, Vertus ended up spinning out like a number of companies. And the one that probably most of us know that are out there in the audience today is Red Storm Entertainment. It was, back, in 1999 or 1996. And with that, with Tom Clancy, first game title was SSN. And that was actually the first game title I worked on with Tom Clancy. It was really interesting and cutting edge at the time. It was a submarine warfare game that was based off of the book for Hunt for October. And as that started to develop and new technology started to come in play, there was a number of other different companies that came around. We had Timeline, which was Michael Crichton, which was roughly around 1999. You had NextView. Ken, I know that's where you went to when you were from Vertus and went over there, which kind of took, again, the core technology for what we built at Vertus and then transformed it and progressed it and advanced it into the next many stages. IROC, which was for Ozzy Osbourne, which was some interesting game titles that came out of there. And then I went to 3D Village that ended up taking the core technology that Vertus built and that NextView was continually growing on top of to create visualizations, but more for business applications. There were some really interesting collaborations that we had between, NextView and Village. And so as you can see, there's a number of game companies that spawned up out of this Vertus family, really kind of helped, that technology helped start this whole genre of all these game engines that you see out today.
Well, let's take a look at some of the some of those forward-thinking industries and how the content creation packages that we were working on at the time became mainstream. So let's look at the what was then, and we'll explore that. So we'll take a look at the array of different things that we're talking about. So, as Troy, as you were saying, we started off with this game, and then there was Vertus Walkthrough, which was a revolutionary platform at the time to be able to, in real time, create buildings and walkthroughs of 3D environments. No one had ever really done this before, especially on the PC or the Macintosh.
That's right,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah, talk about it, because it was interesting, because that was when we really first came into contact with each other.
That's right, man. If we look at the past and the growth, kind of the technologies and the type of work that was being done, I mean, it really was, kind of cutting edge advancements for its time. And I couldn't explain how many times that we go and present this, that just like people were just kind of mind blown. And I know over the years, and really you can kind of see from the top left corner, reading right, and then you got the bottom row left to right. You saw the advancements just slightly better each year for the content and stuff that we created. And it was just amazing to kind of just see over time and the advancements come in. There's a number of like town hall meetings I know we'd be a part of, and David Smith or Mark Easter, one of the guys would come up and say, hey, here's our new thing. All of a sudden we've got this environment that's showing shadows, or you're turning lights on. And at the it's so easy, and you just assumed it happens these days, but back then it was just like it was really cool to be a part of that timeline. And there was a number of companies and types of industries that really kind of leveraged into this technology, and really they were the innovators, they were the forward thinkers, the leaders, kind of in this space, because the technology was very helpful in kind of visualizing something that just wasn't there. Something that you're just trying to say that this is what it's going to look like. I mean, you're experiencing a place that's not real. I mean, simulations, look for procedures or maybe how a product functions for training. I mean, the AEC market, or architectural engineering construction market, being able to see a building on how it looks before you clear the first tree off the lot is powerful. And at the point of seeing detailed plans that can extrude up and physically walk the space, or commercial properties being built. I mean, one of the things that we worked on, actually the one that's in the bottom right corner, was around Margate Towers, which was nestled in the Kingston Plantation down in South Carolina. They had a lazy L design for the building, and they sold all their units, but they were having troubles selling the back unit on the spine of the 18 floors or something that had the building, because they were saying it is an ocean front. Now, when you get in there and you get to the place and you look at it, we physically scaled a tower, which I hate heights, which was not fun at the time, but we took these pictures every 20 feet and we recreated the floor plans, for that corner, kind of suite. And we built the balconies that came off of that. And you could go out in the balconies and you could actually see what it was physically going to look like at that elevation. So the power of visually describing that ended up selling all of the back corner units, which are I think it was almost $1 million a pop. So visualization, being able to come out there and do that was really, really powerful, at the time. The business concepts that we were using, as well, to do athletic facilities. I mean, when you're building stadiums, you need to see a vantage point from where seats are going to be, or you want to pre-sell a box seat before you're again clearing the trees off the lot to level the land to build the structures, can help a long way, especially in cash flow. So again, leveraging these visualizations in that. The movie industry, James Cameron for The Abyss, you're building the underwater scenes. And before you build it, you mock up, like I'm used to, is these massing kind of scale models in architecture. And you're able to build the whole entire set underneath water and then do your vantage points from each camera angle, finding out that you only have to build a quarter of your stage, not 3/4 of it. Is a massive amount of savings.
Yeah.
For that. And it's through visualization. Again, that's what this immersive technology is. Military, we see it all the time around simulation and training, procedural training, situational training. How is my experience going to be before I get there? And if I can repeat this multiple times, how powerful is that going to be? So at least I'm comfortable. I can react when I need to react. We did, the amphibious vehicles was one of the things around how to maintain it, how to operate it, and how do we deploy the vehicle. But these visualizations and the immersive experiences are very, very powerful, and they really help us tell, this story. And Ken, I know you've been a part of, a lot of these projects and get very strategic on these projects. You might want to add, maybe a little bit more on that, but yeah, it's the power of visualization on this technology is really cutting edge at the time.
Well, one of the big things that we did was some work we did for Caterpillar. So, Caterpillar was one of the pioneering companies that we worked with that was really interested in not only creating simulators as standalone simulation devices to train people, but also to put it online to let anybody try out their equipment. And so the problem that we had was threefold. We had to replicate a very complex piece of equipment. B, we were developing a simulator based upon a new style of joystick. So rather than having the pneumatic traditional controls for a backhoe, they were switching to dual joysticks. These are actual digital joysticks. And so for us, it was great because we were able to do the force feedback joysticks. We were able to replicate using a full cab from a Caterpillar vehicle, and then put massive plasma displays to give you the immersive experience of being in the vehicle. And as you can see on the pictures on the screen right now, we were actually able to dig dirt. Now, the big challenge was, how do you get all of that mechanical data about the vehicle into a software rendering system that will play back on the web and as a standalone? And Troy, you were heavily involved in doing all the model building. So what was some of the challenges?
Yeah, you bring back some horror stories a little bit there, but I just remember the data set that we had to work with, because but these are, I can't remember which, I think it was a Pro-E type engineering software package, which obviously has a lot of information. So it was always the question, and I think I still a little bit there today, is that, do you import the content, or do you use that as a silhouette, or use it as a picture to then replicate and build it the way you need to build it? Because if I remember right too, there was some physics engines that we're using, as part of this demo, that we had to build and scale it the right way and put the hinges the right way, just like you're doing character.
And stuff like we ended up writing, so I was heading the team. We wrote our own inverse kinematics engine because there wasn't one that really existed to do what we wanted to do at the time. We wrote our own dirt digging algorithm so that the actual ground was displaced as you were digging. There was a physics engine we tied into it to make things react and get knocked over correctly as you were interfacing with the terrain. I mean, it was amazing. But all of that, and you got to remember, this was 20 years ago. So all of that was stuff that we did then. When you think about where we've come from there to now, it's an amazing step to go from from these early simulators that we were doing, whether it was a golf course or whether it was a backhoe, to now what we have. So in today's world, all of this, in many ways just seems like, okay, boy, wouldn't it have been great to have it be this easy as it is today. There's still challenges, but it is so much easier. And the headsets now, when you're talking about a virtual environment that's not just wraparound plasma displays, but head mount, now you've got the head mounted goggles that allow you to truly be inside the experience. It's just a transformative thing. So Troy, you want to talk about some of that, some of the direction we were going over there?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a great project to work on. And if I remember right, there was a pretty long line of people wanting to kind of sit and experience this. I can imagine today, I mean, when it was in publication, it was like 1,000 people who were like waiting in
Oh,
line
yeah.
just to kind of experience it. So
Yep.
now it's headsets, and now we just have to have a whole bunch of headsets around and
Right.
experience those things. But yeah, I mean, if we look at where we are today and the technology that we've come from in the past, and Ken, you and I were definitely blessed to be a part of a lot of smart people.
Yes.
There was people, David Smith and just the engineering teams and part of Versatime were just amazing. And so it's great to see even now with technology and where we are. I mean, really, we're in, to me, the age of acceleration. The technology has really come so far during those days, and we can better harness the hardware and the software to really create these really impactful experiences. And for me, in the past, the visual quality and the content creation were really kind of some of those challenges. Obviously, the technology was a big barrier to break through, which we did. But with that, the technology and the hardware kind of progressed challenges that aren't as much of a barrier these days, because when you talked about polygon count, and during the time, artists tend to be really, really good with texturing the polygons, which you look at that caterpillar and it's probably going to be 30,000 polygons. When we had to create it, it's like you can only do it in like 3,000 polygons. So you have to get really good with textures. So, but the visual quality, in VR, in gaming, in these kind of engines are becoming more realistic. And if I look at where we were with movies, it was about a 5-year head start on where the quality was at video games at the same time. But now when we look at it, it's almost at the same. I mean, animations, can now be used in technologies using the engines in real-time video capture, reducing the time for production. It's not the point of, I've got to render out multiple layers. I got to make sure the shadows are in there. If the shadows aren't correct or not in the right place of the sunlight, and I've got to re-render everything if I didn't render them on the same layer. So, but with using these engines, you can do stuff now on the fly. The frame rates are a heck of a lot better, a heck of a lot faster. The latency, is not.
And that helps with the motion sickness, because if you don't have enough frames per second, people are going to get nauseous. It's just a psychological effect and a physiological effect. So some of even those challenges have started going away. And so the impact that you're able to make on a broader audience, not just the gamer kids, but on adults in both business and industrial situations, is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the content creation, because that was more on my side of the house of, is how to build the content, and you had to get really strategic on how you built the wireframes, and you had to get really good at texturing and artwork to make sure that the corners were blended together. But when you look at, on the content side, the software is getting much better, obviously, today than versus where we are. Now, I was in 3D Studio Max, DOS days, and I had to load it on a computer that would even run it, but that's to create 3D models. But now there's like so many great tools that are out there in order to create these. There's so many better importers that can, bring stuff in, or exporters that can export stuff out from the software. It's getting a lot faster to produce. And finally, we have a community of like repositories, and it's growing so much more accessibility with these objects that are being placed in the scenes. And before, you had to build everything. Now you can just go on to multiple different sites, community sites out there. You pay some money for it, but it's saving and costing a heck of a lot less to produce and time.
And one of the great things that's happening here is it's leveling the playing field for accessibility. So, many, many, many more companies and individuals can now take that content and use it to create applications. And these applications are available not just to the engineering team or not just to the product development team. These are now available to your marketing team, to your training team. When did HR ever become first on anybody's list? But now we're able to work in concert with the engineering folks and have training that is as accurate as the material, the CAD drawings and the materials available to the engineers, so that when you're practicing on something in a virtual environment today, you are practicing on something that is exactly the same product that is being shipped out the door when your product, when your product cycle is at the point of distribution. That's an amazing thing. And that's what 20 years worth of evolution has done for this. And when you have that capability, then human error can be addressed dynamically, not just from a practice environment, but from dynamic feedback that can happen. One of the great things we learned over 20 years is how to measure the data that's associated with these, basically games that are what we call, serious games or simulations. But all that data, we can project to the user and to their supervisors, so that that any errors that are occurring, any gaps in skills and knowledge can be addressed very quickly, sometimes at the moment that it's happening. Well, that's pretty exciting. And that's something that had not been available before. And it's allowing innovation where innovation just couldn't occur before in this space. So let's take a look at a couple of the examples that we have of stuff that BLDG25 has been involved in today, and where this is going. So Troy, take it.
Yeah. So, again, when we look back, the ideas really are the same. If you remember back in the days, it's just now possible. We had the creativity, we just didn't have the vehicles in order to build the stuff. We knew it then, we just held back, by the hardware and the software. So, if you look over time, there was kind of this like pull and tug between hardware and software. And I had a graph, I didn't put it on here, but there's think of it as a helix. And so over time, hardware would be a lot more advanced and the software just couldn't push the limits of the hardware. And then as the hardware kind of, stayed, then the software would get a lot more capability. And then you would just have the limits of the software could do a lot more of it. And then over time, they kind of just went back and forth. And then, really you just got to the point it was up to us, because they were so close, the hardware and software are so advanced, that it's really just up to us as the creators to kind of push the limits of creativity. And really today, the tools make it easier, as you were mentioning, Ken, to create, to connect these other technologies and these wearable devices together to really make these really immersive experiences. But the industries that are using it have grown, over the years. But the AEC, of course, they're always going to, use this, leverage this. But as you're hearing in a lot of these other presentations that are going on here at this conference, automotive, simulation, training, medical, military, manufacturing, sports are leveraging, this type of technology. But the film industry is using real-time usage of, changes on the set in real time for lighting and animation. And it's, like technology is used in ways to create efficiencies with that. Simulation training.
Yeah, and some of the things that we're doing, so at the bank, we're doing things that deal with the human factor. So empathy training, behavioral skills. These are skills that are not, traditionally thought of when you think about industrial simulation. But they're being recognized now as these integral things that were very difficult to teach without having to have a bunch of other people involved. So having standalone practice environments to do that was very difficult, not only for the content, but to be able to track it. So one of the great things about being, having been involved in the gaming space, especially when you're talking about multi-user games, is that you got a chance to know how to do the data connections and storage that really has lent itself towards the training and development space. What are you guys doing in that area?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you've got there's so much data that's out there. But if you know the intricacies of a lot of these engines, there's a lot of data that can be abstracted out in order to use it. It's just there's so much data that can be tracked. It's just how we're going to use it, and really, it's just not a lot of it's being used today all the time. And we need platforms, to take that data, to allow for these immersive experience to be tracking the data at the same time, which in essence, in return, will track against the goals and better align to your business goals over time. So again, there's so much data out there that's being needed, especially within the simulation and training. Building those digital twins, collaborating, learning, familiarize with the environment before you get ready to go there, experience it before you go there. How are you going to track that data? What are you looking at? What am I interacting with? I mean, I'm talking to the military now around, and as we know in the learning industry, if you do a process procedure in a simulation multiple times, it's going to increase, learning retention. Practice makes perfect. Manufacturing, I mean, you and I were on some early calls, looking at what industries are really looking into. So manufacturing municipalities are really looking into how might they leverage this technology in a way. I meant, AR visualization of data in manufacturing operations and overlaying that to monitor kind of this response in real time, using AI and AR to bring you to the edge. Situational training, people working next to robots. And one of the companies that I'm consulting with and we're consulting with BLDG25, it's all about humans working next to robots. And for them, the ROI is one less fatality, and you can put a price tag on that. So it's it really comes down to that. Build these environments. There's so many now new industries we start building this for, is that it needs to be the full picture. You can't just be a great visual experience, but it's gathering that data that's in the experience, which will be key to successful solutions that we create forward.
So when we think about, or when you think about what's coming tomorrow, I mean, we've got so much going today, it's amazing. So when you think about what's coming tomorrow, what's the first things that come to your mind?
Yeah, well, as we're seeing it right now, the industry is expanding so rapidly. Again, we're in this age of acceleration and technology. There's 130 plus speakers that are just speaking in this conference, and there's more momentum now than ever since the 90s that are leveraging and pushing the limits on this technology. And if we look at the next 10 years, AR is probably estimated to be a $152 billion industry. That's roughly about a 22-fold from where we are today. The advancements in technology around hardware, around software tools, new technologies, and to integrate, we're poised for better all-around experiences that'll reshape our lives and reshape how we live and how we work.
Yeah, what's exciting to me when you think about it from a business standpoint is we're now at a stage. I call it the Ender's Game or Ready Player One stage, which is we have an opportunity to have a practice environment that is almost as real, if not more real, from the standpoint of real-time feedback and other information coming in, and an extreme capability of shortening a process time. So that, it's something that normally would take 24 hours, you can accomplish in a couple of hours through a series of events. But we have the opportunity to do this in a way that's never been possible before. And then you couple that with the fact that there are technologies, and if you haven't seen these yet, you've just got to go look. There's something called the Tesla suit. There are exoskeletons. There are haptic feedback devices for taking, manipulative input that are totally transforming the way we experience VR to where it's a full physical experience. Now you add to that the fact that they're starting to think about and in some cases producing prototypes for taste, smell, biofeedback. We can actually sense your emotional condition now, and your stress level, performance feedback. These things now enable these practice environments to provide a level of sophistication that and data that we only dreamed about before. Okay. And then in those environments, imagine having AI enhanced tools, not only to automate content creation, so this content is being dynamically created or modified as you're going through the experience, but we're able to have behavioral situations where artificial characters, non-player characters as they call it, these are characters that are AI driven and can have a meaningful dialogue with you, that you can ask questions, they can ask questions back, you can have open-ended answers. It's not just a multiple choice answer. And based upon those responses, the environment changes and reflects that. And then if you add to that, that you can have an open world environment, that means that there are no limits to it. It scales dynamically based upon wherever you're going, because you have all of the data from Google Maps and Apple Maps that is becoming available. And so, and the more people participate in this metaverse, the more of this content becomes available and the more you can experience, and you're not limited by any of it. That is a place that you know is straight out of science fiction, but it's not science fiction anymore. It's real. And we're all living in a time where we get to take advantage of this and turn it into our training environments, our in the case of Mars, our off-world experiences where we don't have to travel to Mars to be able to do things on Mars. What an amazing time to be in.
Yeah, so if we look at some of the challenges and the one thing I was gonna hit on, the one thing with like Uncanny Valley, if you've heard the term for that, and some out there, it's just things are getting so realistic. It's almost like we've got to, when we create the content, we've got to think in a way that the brain's going, wait, that's almost real looking, but it's not real looking. So it's kind of toying with something. So there'll be some challenges, I think, as we go forward, and stuff is going to get so realistic. You've seen the new technologies that an Unreal Engine is having, and some of the acquisitions and partnerships that they've got there are really interesting. So that's going to be interesting to see that play. But ultimately, it's all about creating opportunities, and that there's always going to be challenges. We're always going to face challenges because us as innovators, Ken, you, me, and others that are out there that are pushing the limits here, we're going to continue to push the boundaries of creativity. And again, we're always going to keep leveraging these new emerging technologies that keep coming out. Again, there's efficiencies that are all over the place that are coming in that allow us to not have to create our own physics engine. We can plug one in to it and so forth. And businesses are going to continue to adopt these technologies for the coming years. I'm guaranteed of that. But the high cost of the headsets or smart glasses, will probably be a barrier to widespread adoption for a little while. But I feel it's only going to be a short term because the prices are dropping down. More people are getting, around this, big momentum and push of technology. So we're going to get to a place where, we all have them at home. I definitely strongly believe that. So it's definitely going to get, cheaper to buy. It's going to be cheaper to produce content. It's faster. It doesn't have to be exact because, the one thing I always use the architects, degree in architecture, you definitely understand this, is that when you build this content in this environment, it does, your materials, sure, they've got to be pretty close to what the material is going to look like in the building, the shadows the right way, the lighting, and so forth. But does that have to be other objects that are in there? Can the objects just fill a space but not be exactly perfect? The more perfect you're trying to be, the longer it takes, the more cost. So again, those are things that when we look at that, how can we take opportunities to create more efficiencies? And again, it's for me, it's how you build, that content that's so important. It's not just, in the past, it's always just build a piece to build a piece. Oh, it looks nice and we're going to interact with it, but that's all it is. You're not getting data from it. You're not doing anything with it. You're experiencing it one or two times and that's it. And it feels like you put it up on the shelf. So, it has to be like the whole experience. You're going deeper into the behavioral side of like how users interact with the content, which will kind of ensure that you're building the solution the right way. And then, us at BLDG25, we put a lot of, kind of stuff around leverage the game design DNA. And when I say that is that we're leveraging the methods and the processes and how we create engagement. That's what games do. They do that very well. And another thing that they do real well is leveraging behavioral heuristics that are going on, obviously, the backside will make them engaging. So leveraging and combining that with those methods of behavioral psychology, that's the science behind how users are going to interact with that online digital product. And then you just wrap that with emerging technologies, again, to create kind of that full immersed experience that's going to be impactful. And you have to think small, when you do a lot of this stuff, because there's micro learning or just micro chunks. Take that immersive content, layer it in with traditional learning content to again make it more impactful in the whole entire experience. And there's a number of different mediums that we're looking at that you can create all these different types of solutions that are there. And that, you need to build a strategy that solves the business objectives and aligns to the business goals that you're trying to reach. I mean, you can go VR, AR, MR, XR, as you said, all the R's in the beginning, or it's potentially overlaid 360 video. It's about the immersion. It's about the experience you create, and it has to be impactful.
Yeah, the fun part about all of this is in everything we've talked about, from as this whole thing has evolved over time, it's all been about shifting the experience to a case of we're no longer just observers. We are actually living the experiences that we are delivering. And when you can create an environment where the difference between reality and virtual reality is seamless and you can transition back and forth between them, that's when we will have hit a point where we are truly accomplishing things that are just off the charts. And that's where, while you can create this content and do the basics of this, working with companies like BLDG25 that specialize in this, you get a bigger bang for your buck because they've been there, they've done it, and they've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And right now we are in the future, and that is a great place to be.
Yeah, we know how to solve user adoption and the problems. We understand how to adopt new tech, especially with all the different integrations that have to happen now with a lot of different technologies. It's about increased, and we understand the increased production, and we can make it more efficient on cost. And then also, when you have these solutions, you have to understand that you're choosing the right medium and modality, because there's been so many mistakes I've seen made over time where they'll choose the wrong thing just because it's cool. It's got to go beyond just that. And ultimately, you have to understand and know how to align your immersive and virtual experiences with your business objectives. And a lot of times those business objectives, are lost. So I know we're up about time right now. It's, ultimately, I hope everyone has enjoyed the conversation that Ken and I were. I guess it was kind of almost like a podcast-ish, or I guess as you mentioned, a LearnCast. And we want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. And hopefully, if you want to connect or talk or just kind of brainstorm ideas, we're definitely open to talk about next solutions. So don't hesitate to reach out through our contacts here on the site or through LinkedIn. And I hope everyone takes care and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.